How does Zoro compare to top swordsmen? Well, what if I were to tell you he's easily top 10, if not top 5 in the world, with the possibility to surpass characters such as Roger and Whitebeard. Okay, that's glaze, but Zoro does have some of the highest potential that rivals the main character at times. To explain that and his overall capabilities, we have to cover his progression so far. Now, we're not going over his backstory since everyone knows it. However, I do need to remind people about the swordsman's values and principles so we can get a better understanding of how he acts during battle. Roanoa Zoro is a man convicted by a promise. Ever since the death of his main rival at the age of 8, he trains relentlessly to become the world's greatest swordsman. The child practiced to the point of being able to defeat adults, and this is reflected during his tenure in the East Blue, where he could have easily defeated every villain the Straw Hats encounter. By the time he met Luffy, they were both already Grand Line level fighters, and when Zoro got to the Grand Line, he would continue to push himself to the limit. Sword techniques, physical power, even displaying haki usage at times. However, the main strength setting the swordsman apart from his contemporaries to this day is the respect of his captain. Because unlike many characters, Zoro is not just working for himself, as he prioritizes Luffy becoming the Pirate King over his own goal. That's not to say he doesn't care about becoming the world's greatest swordsman or the other Straw Hats don't do so, but for Mosshead, it often comes down to a split decision. The best example being the interaction with Kuma. The swordsman could have lived on at the expense of Luffy, but instead, Zoro staked his own life, which is why he ends said interaction having a better endurance feat than anything his captain had done up to that point. The reason Roanoa Zoro pushes past his limits defying deadly odds is because he constantly carries two of the biggest ambitions on his back. It's the reason why he has Conqueror's Haki, whereas other first commanders don't. He's not just following his captain, nor does he only worry about his own goal. Speaking of those commanders, this narrative is reinforced by his showings post time skip. Zoro became so powerful, he didn't even have to try until Wano. Even then, he still had the craziest haki blooms in the series, going from tagging and reacting to the Yonko to permanently scarring / blitzing Kaido. Ashura is above the rooftop 5 completely, all of them individually being stronger than characters like Doflamingo or Katakuri. King of Hell is the same exact concept as Ashura, with the swordsman needing to put all of his power into the blade. In fact, this form should be even greater, as Zoro was given a drug to recover his body from the rooftop battle. I haven't seen many people disagree with this prospect, but for those who do, keep in mind King of Hell is Zoro's advanced Conqueror's Haki awakening. He and Luffy were relative on the rooftop, Luffy surpassing the worst generation as well. So even if you don't think King of Hell is stronger than Ashura, Zoro still surpassed the rooftop 5 since his awakening is the exact same as Luffy. For now, I'm going to go with the first interpretation, so blitzing / scarring weaker versions of Kaido would be a light affair for King of Hell. Honestly though, there isn't any point in covering all that, as a fully recovered Zoro is even better. Full recovery would also eliminate the haki issues from his fight with King, as he had already been using haki for an entire night at that point. Then the Straw Hats get stronger with every island, so the Egghead version is considerably greater than anything displayed on Wano. Roanoa Zoro at this point is a complete monster, but let's get a better comparison to the other swordsmen and the distance from his goal. I'll begin with the relevant sword fighters Zoro 100% beats. Brook, no diff, nothing more to say. All 9 Scabbards, no diff. I know it may sound crazy to some, but Mosshead can blitz the guy who easily defeated them. Vista, low diff. This is the one everyone wants to know about. How does Zoro compare to Vista? But it isn't even close anymore. At best, Vista is close to Marco in terms of power, Zoro having far better showings than Marco. Big Mom writes off the Phoenix as a waste of time while she fights him, yet on rooftop she's scared of Mosshead when he's not even aiming for her. Then, the swordsman would far surpass said version of himself. I personally think Vista is far weaker than Marco, though it doesn't really matter, he still loses. Trafalgar Law. Here we fucking go. I've said this like 80 times. Zoro blitzes Kaido, who blitzes Law. On the next page, Law haki blooms, but the vice captain gets stronger too. Zoro mid-diffs Law, devil fruit abilities, and all. It's simple, so simple in fact I have an entire 4-minute video talking about it. I'm probably gonna have to remake that shit in the future because there are a bunch of arguments that I haven't covered yet. A different vid for later though. For now, let's touch on the opponents who Zoro would have a hard time with, starting on Shiryu. Okay, so the main reason I rank Shiryu above Mosshead is because I believe he's going to be a future opponent, so really this section makes no sense, but let's just roll with it. The former warden is in the monster trio of the Blackbeard Pirates though. Oda implied he was the second strongest member of the crew before Aokiji was confirmed to be a Titanic captain. So just off that, Shiryu should upscale from everything the other Titanic captains do, including feats such as taking named attacks from Garp, reacting to Saturn, fighting Sabo, etc. The biggest thing Zoro would need to worry about is Shiryu's fruit power. The vice captain throughout his entire time in the New World has never seriously needed observation haki. A battle with Shiryu would be the perfect opportunity to develop this aspect of Zoro's moveset, especially if he is to fight Hawkeye's Mihawk. Besides that though, Shiryu has no other abilities setting him above Zoro. If they were to fight, I think it would be a high diff battle, with the Pirate Hunter coming out on top. Moving on to our next relevant swordsman, Rayleigh, and to be clear, I'm speaking on old Rayleigh for this section. Despite possessing every advanced version of haki, legendary status, scared Blackbeard, blah blah blah, there isn't any showing to say he's leagues beyond Zoro. The main feats people meat ride old Ray for are the fight against Kizaru and scaring Blackbeard, both of which are impressive but also cap. We can tell by the Luffy versus Kizaru fight that the Admiral was holding back many techniques against Rayleigh. He never used any clones, deception tactics, not even regular kicks or light blasts. The Admiral only fought with a sword and Rayleigh was still losing to him. Scaring Blackbeard is a similar cap issue. I don't understand why people hype this man up when on the next page he says he would lose to Blackbeard. No, Rayleigh is not a Yonko Slayer, old man trio. I hate when people say that. The main issue Zoro can catch him on is stamina. After fighting Kizaru for a few minutes, Ray is already huffing and puffing. It's pretty clear he doesn't possess the endurance required to fight an admiral for long periods of time, something I think Mosshead does have. Now, I'm not saying Zoro can defeat the admirals or anything, but in terms of endurance and stamina, he would most likely perform better than his predecessor, especially if we factor willpower or narrative into the fight. As said earlier, Zoro always carries two ambitions on his back, causing him to surpass his limits in desperate situations. Compare that to Rayleigh, an old man who has already accomplished his goals, taught the next generation, and has no reason to fight. In my opinion, a battle between Zoro and Rayleigh would end in Zoro breaking his ceiling, defeating the old man due to willpower / his opponent's lack of stamina. Extreme diff though, and that being said, let's get into the swordsman Zoro can't defeat. Starting with Admiral Fujitora. I'm gonna be honest, at this point, I don't think the Straw Hat can beat any of the admirals. But aren't you the guy that said he can beat Big Mom? Yeah, fucker, my opinion can change too. I should probably delete that video completely, but we have humility here. I own up to my past mistakes. The admirals have been shown multiple times not only to have crazy abilities, but also be endurance monsters. Though the two newcomers are not as strong as Kizaru due to Luffy's reactions to them. On Wano, despite still not being fully recovered, he was not pressed by Green Bull's presence at all. Whereas when Kizaru pulled up to Egghead, Luffy was sweating. The contrast being even more apparent when characters like Yamato, who's basically equal to Zoro, can make Green Bull wary of their presence with just one hit. However, Kizaru can easily blitz Gear 4 Snake Man Luffy, who is far beyond both Zoro and Yamato. So while I don't think Fuji is far above Zoro's pay grade, he still wins, most likely high diff. This is a video about swordsmen, but the gravity powers alongside observation haki would make Fuji an extremely tough opponent for Zoro. Then, unlike Rayleigh, he actually has the stamina to boot. So before we get into the actual best swordsmen, let's talk about the world government. Both Venus Juro and Garling are completely unknown currently. Of course, the reason I made this video was due to Zoro clashing with Venus. However, characters clash all the time, and I don't think he's truly ready for him yet. You can make a case for the 5 elders being portrayed as greater than Kizaru, who Zoro has no chance against. Even if you don't believe that, Jinbei repeatedly comments on the elders having an overwhelming presence, yet when next to Big Mom, he doesn't give her haki any thought. Plus, all of them are able to pressure and take hits from Gear 5 Luffy. So it's most likely that the Gorosei are entire tiers beyond Zoro's level. Definitely still fights with them, however, Jinbei being there with Zoro and Venus shows that it's probably going to take the both of them them to overcome the Elder. Garling could be a similar case. Many speculate he is at least above the admirals, and if it's true, the Straw Hat still loses. Now this last section may seem redundant, but I'm going to talk about Shanks and Mihawk for a moment to see how far away Zoro is from his goal. At the minimum, Hawkeye and his old rival are weaker than Kaido, who has been stated / portrayed to be the strongest creature. Again, at the minimum, this isn't a Kaido video. I don't care who you think is stronger or weaker. I'm just using Kaido as reference. Current Zoro is at the same point Luffy was when he first awakened Advanced Conquerors. Luffy became extremely powerful, yet it still took him 2 more amps to defeat Kaido. Those amps being Sky-Splitting Conquerors Haki and Gear 5. Giving Mosshead the same treatment means he's about 2 major power-ups away from being on Mihawk's level. Shanks supports this idea, as I believe Zoro would have mild difficulty fighting Kid or Law, but then Red Hair is just able to one-shot the captain with no difficulty. So all in all, how does Zoro compare to top swordsmen? Well, in my opinion, being able to competently fight with any of the Yonko puts him above characters such as Vista or the Scabbards. He has the haki and strength to overpower Trafalgar Law, and due to his insane willpower, he can surpass the likes of Shiryu or Old Rayleigh. However, at this point in the story, Zoro doesn't have the versatility or stamina to beat Admiral Fujitora, probably the same for Garling and Venus Juro as well. In terms of his relation to Mihawk, the swordsman most likely still has 2 major power-ups before he can battle characters of said level. Roanoa Zoro still has a ways to go, but there are only a handful of swordsmen in the world who can even touch him.